Welcome, guys, to Prepared episode 43. We're back. Zirene was sick last time, but we're back now. So welcome back, Zirene. And yeah, we got a nice podcast today. We got a lot of interview stuff to talk about. I know a lot of people have read the Brian Birmingham interview. That's a really
lot of people are mad.
Yeah, a lot of angry people there. So we're definitely going to cover that. Have a look at what he discussed, what's coming up for Wrath, what changes they're doing and what they're not doing. And we got a little like Sunwell recap as well. It's been a while since I talked to Zirene. Sunwell recap, some PvP stuff with arena points and such. But
did we talk about Thoridal last time?
We didn't. We didn't talk about Thoridal.
We didn't. No, I'd like to talk about Thoridal just a little bit.
Okay, so. Yeah, we can talk about that because we do have I don't know if Zirene's seen. It's been going around the council of guys that I put together with. I didn't put together, but I'm
the Council of Guys, so eloquently named.
Yeah, the Council of Guys. I think that's the official term. The Council of Guys,
the COG,
the different discords have finished the physical DPS comparison sheets.
Ooh,
so yeah, we can have a live look.
Is this the what's better for which class?
Yeah, well, it's not so much what's better for which class, but what are the actual DPS numbers for every class, for every like upgrade for physical at least.
It's like, if you gave a warrior Thoridal versus a hunter?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
You gave warrior Thoridal, or you gave like a hunter, like immortal legs over this class, like what are the DPS changes and such. So yeah, so we got that sheet all done and good to go. So I thought we had give a little look over it later in the podcast.
Just early like, teaser for this. Thoridal's fucking hard. That's all I know about it right now. I know a few things more, but like Thoridal is actually really hard to use without it being like a DPS loss or not maximizing its DPS potential. It seems
don't say that, Zirene. The Hunter Discord's gonna hate on you. They already hate me.
No. I think they'll agree on this because Thoridal is really awkward to use, especially if you're melee weaving already. Because it's fast. It's a very, very fast weapon for a hunter.
That's going to be interesting then. But yeah, we'll talk.
Still think it's good for them, but I definitely think it's a fast.
So what you're saying is, Zirene, is Thoridal warrior prio.
That's a completely different sentence. That's a completely different sentence.
Well, that's going to be a great clip for the start of the podcast. A little clip that I put.
It's a completely different sentence, and I clearly said rogue. Okay, so no.
But yeah, so we were talking about it just before the podcast started, but let's talk about the fact that Firemaw is now locked. It started, the last time we had the podcast scheduled, it was just them saying, so there's free character transfers off Firemaw. If you want to leave the most popular server, you can go. Basically, they're saying.
You can leave the most popular server, Pog.
Yeah. If you want to leave your busy server and go to a deserted wasteland, you can do that if you choose. And now it's, on top of that, the server is also locked. You can't even, I believe you cannot even make new characters. I'm not sure, but I believe you cannot even make new characters. Let me double check the Wildhead post. Let's have a look. Yeah, so that is the post that they basically just said, as of 20 minutes ago, it is no longer possible to transfer to Firemaw, and it is no longer possible to make a character on Firemaw if you do not already have a character on Firemaw. So you can't even make a character on Firemaw anymore. It's just like completely locked. Because for people that don't know, Firemaw is now at the stage where it's normal to have 2-hour queues during the peak time login. Things are starting to break. The big problem with servers, not just because of the fact that the queues go 2-3 hours. Yeah, some people in the chat are saying up to 4-hour queues on the raid nights as well. That things start breaking, like the mail system starts breaking, auction house starts breaking and such, because I think Firemaw is 40,000 people? Now, it's insane. Firemaw is the biggest server in the world.
Auction house on Benediction Alliance side is just broken all the time anyway. So it's like, if you want to buy consumes right before raid, you have to get on like an hour before to get everything from the auction house that you want. But it's bad if you use like, I got to the point where like if you need anything like enchanting mats or stuff like that, it's god awful. It's actually just so bad.
There's gonna be a market for like that raid time. At raid time, you just show up. Hey, selling auction selling raid mats. You can trade me because the auction house isn't working. There's a 10 gold premium for every item though.
Yeah. Oh god, 10 gold premium. Hold on a second. With snow. Holy shit. But yeah, somebody just said you shouldn't be buying your stuff at raid time anyway. Well, I'm just saying, like, if you didn't prep your bags before, because like if you're not doing it at like 2 a.m., right? If you're not doing it in the middle of the night, then it's bad. So
yeah. Well, I mean, the big problem is because the queues on Firemaw have been happening for a while now. It's just only recently it's gotten worse and worse. And early on, there used to be more people that were on the side of, oh, it's not too bad, right? Because they say, oh, you just log in a little bit earlier, just make sure you're good and such. But the longer the queues get, the more of an annoyance it becomes. And we've talked about this in the past with the queues, in that it's not just that you're logging in and waiting for the queue, is that you have to pre-plan those hours before raid to make sure you're not late for the raid. You gotta make sure you don't accidentally mess up your queue somehow and then leave the queue or get kicked from queue. And if you get in there early, you gotta make sure your character's moving every 30 minutes or leaving that zone area every 1 hour before it kicks you out of that area. And then there's like a whole bunch of like lists that you have to check off to the point where you can't just like chill. You don't like, a lot of people like to chill before raid time. You don't get that when you're on the queue. You get I'm stressed because I'm scared I'm gonna get kicked off and not be able to raid tonight system, which is why people really, really do not like the queues. But,
okay. Yeah. I mean, nobody likes queues in general, right? Queues are just a. What the fuck?
I'm trying to think here. Does anyone like queues? No.
Who likes queues? Nobody went, oh, thank God there's a queue so I can go do my laundry and go like watch an entire TV show.
That's like, one guy. That's one guy in the YouTube comments. He's going to be like, I love queues. How dare you say that queues are not something that I can love every day?
Even if you like queues, you don't like queues that are random lengths and not like completely static the entire time. And you're like, oh, I had to get on 15 minutes beforehand every time. Now it's like 2 hours beforehand, and hey, it might speed up, so don't completely AFK. Like it's just terrible. It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. It's rough. But the thing is, I don't know what the solution is, right? Because like we said, they
take everyone off Firemaw.
Yeah, they
just let them. No,
they offer the transfer off, but what is the alternative? Like, people don't want to transfer off Firemaw. You go to a deserted server and just sit on that deserted server with no one else. That's worse than just staying on Firemaw. So I don't know what the solution is. Right.
Sounds like fun.
Especially with the Blizzard's track record, is probably what would happen if you do pick the transfers. You transfer off, you're good for a little while, and then that server dies, and now you're stuck, and you got to transfer back to Firemaw if you want to play again. So they haven't offered any optimal solution or any real solution, and I actually don't know what they can even do. Like beyond allocating more resources to the server, but I think they have scaling issues. I think I was looking at Brian Birmingham's Twitter in that he was saying that, yeah, we can allocate more resources so that there's no queues and such, but the auction house and mail system and all of that still has issues with, like, once it gets to a server of that size, there's a lot of more work that has to be done for a server to function with that many people, with all the auction house issues.
The technology isn't there, the infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not like there's not a solution, but it's just that the solution is probably not as simple as just allocating more resources. They got to figure out how to scale. I mean,
it never is. Like, the solution is never simple, right? Yeah. Especially, like, that's one of the things that I definitely sympathize or empathize with game designers on, is the solution is never really as simple as the public thinks it is. Everybody's just like, oh, just do this, forehead. Just make the servers larger, forehead. Like, it's like, well, yeah. You maybe could, but it's like, literally, if we let everybody log into Firemaw that wanted to log in, you would have all these other issues. Auction house would literally be unusable, right? It's like all these other different things would happen. Issues with zones, with lag, with latency. So it would go from one complaint to another, and it's like, which one is actually worse for the gameplay experience of, like, shit goes very wrong? Would people rather sit in a queue, or would they rather have their auction house be something that is frustrating, where they sit there waiting for it to load, then it finally loads, then they press on buy, and those items aren't there, like they literally can't use the auction house? It's like, well, that's a more frustrating experience because you're interacting with the game in a frustrating way than sitting there in a queue. And so there's multiple issues like that, and it's just like, would and it's just that one for the auction house, right? That's basically like you would have more compounding factors and things that would frustrate players and all that. So they think that the queuing is the lesser of the two evils.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's never as simple as you think it is.
I mean, the other problem is with Wrath coming, the servers are only going to balloon again at some point. We're going to get some fall off over the next 4 or 5 months or whatever it is before Wrath. But at the same time, Wrath is probably going to be the most popular launch as well. People are going to come back. A lot of people love Wrath. Even if they come back just for the launch, there's going to be a lot of people. So what's going to happen to the servers then? Because the servers are only ever shrinking or conglomerating into one massive server for each side. The EU, I think, has the exception that EU does have a Gehenna's as well, but Gehenna's is Horde only. And
again, it's a Horde prio, dude.
Eventually, that server is going to have the same issues, right? Even if people go to Gehenna's instead, like if everyone goes to Gehenna's, then Gehenna's has the issue now, right? And the servers are more of those issues are only going to crop up as the servers keep getting bigger and bigger as one server choices, right? Like everyone just wants to roll on that one server is the problem. So even if the WoW population is shrinking, that one server just continues to grow, which is what has happened with Firemaw, Gehenna's, Benediction on NA, Felina's Horde side as well. Like every faction just picks up one server and they're like, okay, that's our server. No one else roll on anything else now. It's the problem. So I don't know if they have a solution, honestly. I don't. I think the only solution is they got to deal with the fact that it's just super servers now and they got to find a way to make it work because people aren't going to roll on a different server.
People won't change servers just because you tell them to.
Yeah.
No reason for them to do that.
But Zirene, confession time, Zirene. Have you been playing a little bit of this dirty Shockedin rogue comp in twos? I may have seen a little Zirene and Chanimal the other day in queues.
Okay, so I was raiding in Who, and then I was told, okay, so I sat there and I went, guys, you know, we've run into this problem, right? That I said was going to happen. No, you guys didn't give me Tempest of Chaos as your prop paladin, so we got to go do Mount Hyjal. And I was like, Mount Hyjal, like the Tempest of Chaos is prop paladin bis for the entire game, unless you're going to PvP. And then that PvP difference is you gain 2 hit and like 6 or 7 spell power, but you lose like 24 crit or something like that. Is it 24? Yeah, 24 crit. So you gain like 7 spell power, 2 spell hit, but you lose 24 crit, which only applies to a few spells. So technically, the Season 4 weapon is your bis. But if you're not going to PvP, because I'm not going to PvP on all my paladins, then Tempest of Chaos is bis. And so I was like, oh, we got to do Mount Hyjal still, guys. You know, we just did Sunwell. We just did, Black Temple. We got to do Mount Hyjal because you guys, I'm using the pink dildo hammer still. This thing don't hit too hard. So to which the response from the GM was, Chanimal's doing free boosts to 1850. So Chanimal was boosting me to 1850 so that I can get my weapon as a guildy favor to not have to do Hyjal again, basically. So.
I mean, that seems like a good trade. If I was Chanimal, I'd do that all day. I'll boost anyone. Just don't bring me back to Hyjal. No more Hyjal.
But like, this is the thing. This is the problem that like I was telling people about, where I was like, if you don't want your prop paladin to have to PvP, or they don't PvP, or they aren't good enough to get 1850 or whatever, maybe you have to like dig your, like, maybe if you have a prop paladin who didn't get Tempest of Chaos and he tanks for you, you should buy Chanimal's boosting services. No. Dig deep into that G-Bank money and buy Chanimal.
Chanimal's really played the long game on this one, hasn't he? He joined Who, he got into raiding, and instead of like getting into raiding, rather he's converted his entire guild to Chanimal services.
Oh, God. But I can attest to that. He is playing a rogue, and he is boosting a holy paladin that is playing Shockedin. So he's basically 2v1ing every game, or 1v2ing every game.
God, we almost got him, man.
It's a good experience.
I saw you guys.
You guys had him at 200. You had him at like 170 HP.
Yeah. And the annoying thing is, it was the Chanimal difference that did everything there, actually. Because I went back, I was curious, like, what are the comms like when they saw me in reality? Because Chanimal knows our comp as well. And he knows what reality he's playing. And I looked back at his comms, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna go the long way, and that's already smart because he knows I'm running at him with goggles. So he's like going the long way around, and he's like, yeah, as soon as Snow lands kidney shot, bubble me.
Yeah.
He like knows everything to just make it as annoying. Did you hear that part
too? Where he was like, as soon as he kidneys, bop me, and then I bopped him, and then he said, "Fuck, I forgot, I told you to bop me." Because I think he trinketed anyway.
Yeah, he trinketed anyway.
I was like, oh.
Yeah, so we caught him, but then the problem is Chanimal also knows that Reality is playing UA, and UA is super squishy. That's the downside, is that you do a lot of damage, but he knows that he can just run at Reality, and bad things happen because you guys double shielded, and I couldn't do anything. That's the problem as a rogue, is that Paladin teams just screw you up so much.
Yeah, they do.
You literally put Bob on him, and then you bubbled and healed him and just sat there, and I couldn't do anything to him.
he jumped off, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so bad." I was like, "What is he doing?" I was like, he jumped off. He's like, "Oh, I'm so bad." Like I was like, "Fuck, Chan, we good?" And then he had like 100 HP. I just barely got him.
Yeah, you guys got up to a decent MMR though. I think you guys were up
we're
like
1850 now, so
something.
He did his job.
Yeah, he did his job.
Yeah, he was laughing his ass off because like half the games he was like, "You're out damaging me," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just running in and pressing consecrate." Yeah, I'm pressing consecrate, and oh man, I did it.
I did watch the game afterwards where you tried to heal and then you realize that you're a Shokiden and you don't have the mana to heal.
Oh, that was the only game we lost that day. Actually, we lost that because of there was a screw up on. I think it was either we messed up a blind or we messed up the target. He really likes to go the rogue, and I really like to go the druid there. I really think that with cheap shot, kidney, and Hodge, the druid has to trinket, and then you can blind, and then you just go on the other person, right? And I think he just wanted to really go on rogue. I don't know. Yeah, the druid got away from us though at one point.
He's probably really scared of the druid getting away, because if they're like really good rogues, I think in rogue druid they just peel.
That was the one where
they focus fully on peeling.
That was the one where halfway through the druid like swapped into a boomkin, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of rogues that do druids are doing like that boomkin heal spec thing now as well.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what happened in that game, so I'm sorry if I got the details wrong, Chan. But Chan is definitely a way better player than me when it comes to arena, but I definitely have like a lot of pally experience in arena. It's all old experience though. It's like all 15-year-old experience, because I was gladiator back in season 3 and 4 in original WoW, when people didn't realize how bad paladins were and how good druids were, and people didn't re-roll the OP class all the time. So, but also paladins aren't too bad against like the thing is, paladins aren't bad against rogues. Like, at all, right?
Paladins really mess up rogues, especially with the amount of double DPS rogues.
It's strange because like paladins are good against two of the best classes, which are rogue and druid. Like you're one of the only classes that have a slow that sticks to druids with Judgment of Justice, right? Like it stops them from moving faster than 100% movement speed, so you'll always catch them and have like your warrior stick to the druid with Judgment of Justice plus freedom on your warrior. But you insta lose against all warlocks. Like there's no way you beat a warlock unless you're playing Shokiden. But otherwise you lose to warlocks all the time. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's how twos
bad.
Works a lot of the time, right? Weirdly with like the Q system, and that's why a lot of people don't like. They like twos, but they don't like twos at the same time, because sometimes it's just you climb or fall based on what else is queuing that particular time.
It's not really your ability. It's who else is what other class is.
Yeah, it's funny because I know Bobka is in the chat, and he was he left his glad push till the really last minute for last season, and he plays Wotlk as well. And Wotlk is a very fun comp, but Wotlk is either really, really good or just really, really bad, depending on the comp that you queue against. And
I think after we beat you guys, I immediately said to Chan, I was like, I would never play Wotlk, and he's like, oh, Wotlk. He's like, I hate that, and I'm like, yeah, I would never play Wotlk ever again. Like I played it for a bit, and I just absolutely hated it. Like in terms of like my favorite rogue comps now. It's like Rogue Priest is like by far my number one to play. Sorry. Rogue Priest is like by far my number one to play. It's so much fun. There's like so much interplay you guys do with each other. It's great. Rogue Mage is fucking cozy as shit. So Rogue Mage is my number 2. Rogue Druid is like a far number 3. And then Rogue Feral is like right below that. And then way at the fucking bottom is Rogue Warlock. I hate playing Rogue Warlock. It's like if you want to make like a quick play, like you have to play with a fucking Warlock that is out of his mind.
Yeah.
Like you guys have almost no healing between the two of you. You can't mess up. They don't have like defensive shit like Ice Block that a mage has. Their CC is Fear. Sure, it's great for like, setting things up and stuff, but oh my god, he has to track his dots so well. Yeah,
they have
like
to be.
If he
they have
dots
to be
an off target a single time, you're like, I can't blind this guy for like 20 seconds. It's like, yeah, you guys really have to know the script of who you're going on and when you're swapping. And if he's double dotting or if he's not double dotting, and if he's not double dotting, who he's actually going to be dotting the whole time.
Yeah, and he's got to like watch his distancing as well. And there's a big difference I've played because I've played with a whole bunch of different locks from like the best with Chanimal down to just random arena partners that I found in trade chat. And there's a big difference in how much damage they take as well with their positioning, their ability to peak. Like if I play with Chanimal or Reality, I'll look at the HP. After everything's gone and they're like still 70%, they're good. But if it's with like a random who's not as experienced, they're just like dead in the first 5 seconds. I'm like, I can't do the rest of the script because you're dead. So it's it's like a love or hate comp. And I know Bobka in the chat, he played something like 200 games on the last day or two because he couldn't get past this block of rogue priests blocking him from the holy land of rogue warrior warrior healers. Rogue Lock really dumps on warrior healers, but they lose to the rogue healer teams a lot of times, or it's like a lot harder versus the rogue healer teams. So if you go into the holy land of just warrior healers, you can climb all the way to rank 1 if you get there. but if you don't get them, then you just lose a lot of the times. So it's the way it goes. But we should talk about the arena point stuff because this is a interesting thing that happens. So
yeah. You've had this thing pulled up for points in 5s.
Yeah.
All right. Break this down for me, Mr. Snow.
Okay, so for people that don't know, people that don't really PvP, I'm sure like even the PvEers know at this point, but they basically doubled or more the amount of points you get from PvP. Whether it's 2s, 3s, or 5s. Basically, 1500 5s team gives you something like 1400 points. Yeah. 1400 plus points just for 1500, which is a very entry level for 5s. So, like with 5s, you could probably get 5 DPS and zug your way to 1500.
Yes, you could
with 5s because it's such a
you very much
thing.
So could.
Yeah, so it's basically made it so that anything that isn't pushing for Glad or a title is irrelevant because you're probably gonna just go do 3s or 5s, get your 10 games in at 1500, and that's gonna be more points. I have another chart here where it's this might not be completely factual because they're still like trying to make sure everything lines up well with the formulas, but it basically means that 2s is just trash tier for points now, compared to how easy it is to get points from 3s and 5s. Because whatever they did with the scaling of things when they doubled it, the curve stayed the same, which means that once you reach a certain amount of points gained in that bracket, it's very hard to gain more. So the difference between like a 1600 2s team and a 2k 2s team is barely anything in points actually gained. The amount of points you actually gain going beyond that 1600-ish rating is so tiny that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter unless you're doing it for a different reason like Gladiator title or something. That there's really no reason to grind past right now because the points in 5s and 3s is so insane. For people that don't know, basically to have like a team that gets you 13 or 1400 points in a week, that used to be someone who's got like a 2.4k 3s team or something like that. It usually used to have to be cracked out at a very high rating to get the amount of points, but now it's like anyone can get the points. Basically, they decided, which brings about a lot of questions. People are questioning like, is this because they feel not enough people PvP? Is this because they feel that
faster season.
Yeah, is it going to be a faster season? Is this because last season was like a shock and people didn't have enough time to save up points and such? Is this like what are reasons for them doing this? They didn't really say why, but it's What are your guesses, Zirene?
I have a few guesses. My first one is that like they definitely want people interacting with the system more. If it's more rewarding to interact with, people will interact with it more, even if they weren't going to interact with it before. My other hunch is this also gives people a way to, if they have like new characters or something, it's not impossible for you to get a good weapon in 2-3 weeks before like Wrath, right? So like I'm going to play Paladin, but if I'm playing Holy, is like, am I going to have a group? Do I want to have a two-hander? It's very easy to like just pick up an item that is good for you. It's also accelerating, catch-up mechanics and stuff like that. So, and I also think that there's not going to be a season where this stuff is available for a discounted price of like honor or anything, right? So I think this is like you can get your full stuff here before season ends. And I think people will interact with the system more. So I think there's a lot of like factors to it. I think it's the right move, but I also think it's another thing too, where this is the time to experiment with arena team points, because arena teams are maybe going away in Wrath, right? So this might be one of the last things where they're like, hey, let's get people interacting with this system, see how truly bad it is. If more people like interact with it, and then we can actually just get their foot in the door. And then when we remove teams, how are we going to scale personal points, right? Because right now people are going to get carried by the team members or swapping and things like that. So later it'll be personal and you can basically play with whoever you want, kind of like retail, right? So there's a lot of potential reasons for it. I can't say exactly what it is, but there are a few things that I think are like pretty reasonable to assume. Yeah,
I didn't think about the factor that there might not be a discounted time to buy gear after the season, right? Because a lot of people have gotten used to that.
It'll be discounted with points maybe, but I don't think it'll ever be available for like honor, right?
Yeah. So that's actually a good point. But the only downside of all of this has been that that it really shows the disparity with the twos bracket. a lot of people like don't even care about twos anymore because of what it means for the points. It's pretty much, if you're playing twos, you're playing it because you like playing twos at this stage.
Yeah.
Because the points do not matter. So the only thing I wish they did was that I wish they put the twos bracket up to at least like the threes level for the points gain, so that it doesn't feel as like wasted when you're doing twos now.
Gotcha. I mean, twos has always felt bad, right? Like I played twos back in the day, and I'm mostly a twos player. Twos just feels bad unless you like really like your partner. Like the reason to play twos is to chill with your boy. It's not something you do to cap, right? It's not something you do to get gladiator because the fucking the cap is way too high.
Yeah,
right.
Cap. Yeah, I always look at the glad title as if you get. Like at least for me, the one of the reasons why I never tried to like cheese the glad title in fives or whatever, is because
not like people play fives, but
I wanna do it for twos, because I always told myself if I get glad, I'm gonna do it in twos because then I feel like I've earned it. Whereas if I get it in like fives, I feel like I didn't earn this. I just got 4 other people who were willing to put in the time to grind, and they're half decent at PvP. Because that feels like what the glad title on fives is like, is that, you just had more time to get 4 people as well on at the same time, because people hate queuing for fives, like organizing and doing it every week. That's probably the glad challenge for fives is not so much the rating, but getting 4 people who are decent at PvP to log on at the same time every week and queue enough to get your rating high enough. Is the fives challenge.
I completely agree, honestly. Like that is God, I remember trying to just get everybody on every week. We were like 2200 the first week, and we were like, okay, this is an easy like rank 1 title. We just got to get like 23, maybe 2400 and sit. And then every week, like we skipped points. Like I had a 2200 fives team, and I didn't complete buying all 5 pieces of my my vengeful, and we had it like literally the first week. So it was like the last week we didn't even play. It's also because we had people in different time zones. We had a dude in Australia. Mistake. And then I raid all the time, like every week. So, it's it's not always easy to find time. I'm guilty too. It's not always easy to find times that I'm available. So I definitely think it's a problem as well.
Yeah. Although it is interesting because I think it's Wrath, right? Where at some point they phase out the twos bracket for being able to even get Glad and
that
such.
was Wrath. That was Wrath. I remember because it's also one of the reasons that I quit. Because I was a twos player more than anything. Like I told you, like I got Glad on Paladin in twos in season 3 and 4. I didn't really enjoy threes. Fives as a Paladin felt really cheesy. Threes as a Paladin felt like it was overwhelming because there's more classes that fuck you over than ever. You're just like, if any team, like there's 50% more people on the other team. There's 50% more chance that there is a Warlock on the other team. Like I never get to cast. So it was, or even like a Shaman that's going to keep interrupting you. Anything that's going to like sit on you like that. It's just always an awful experience. So it was, I was like, okay, the only way I can really ever get Glad or a title or a mount was from twos. So when I did Wrath the Lich King and it approached I think it was one of the middle seasons. Because I quit around Trial of the Grand Crusader because I just didn't like the instance compared to Old War. It made Old War like completely obsolete. And then they took away my reason to PvP is what I remember happening. So I was just like, there's nothing keeping me to this game now. There's no like incentive for me. So yeah, I very, very vividly remember somebody said it's like season 7 when they removed Two's title. Yeah, I remember it being in the middle and I was actually really upset. So yeah. Sorry for the little rant there, but it was just something that it was another one of the reasons that I had actually fallen away from the game was I was sitting there going, like in my mind, what is the reason to make twos not give titles?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess does
it pull people away from the other brackets? Like I don't understand. Is it maybe they complained because it was
it's too formulaic? Maybe people just felt
too formulaic. Like the rogues are gonna get it, the priests are gonna get it, right? Like they're like, oh, it's a bracket that DKs are gonna get it, or so I don't know.
I think Wrath, if I remember right, Wrath 2s was like one of the early seasons was when like rogue like one rogue team at one point just ruined the rank 1 era because they pushed to some unreachable level early on in the season and never played again. And they just secured safe rank 1 and 2s because no one could ever catch them back then.
Jesus.
So they were like 2.5k and everyone was like down at 2k. And they're just like, okay, we're done for the season. We'll see you guys next season.
Mm-hmm. Man,
I do remember that because I tried to emulate them as a rogue does. I was like, oh, these guys are doing that. We should do that. I started messaging my rogue buddies. I was like, dude, we gotta play rogue.
Yo, what up, man? You good? Like, can we play now? Oh shit.
But yeah, I guess before we wrap up the little points talk, I will say, guys, if you want really easy points, make a threes team. It's like kind of the middle ground. Your threes team can literally sit at 1500 rating. And as long as the person you add has a half decent MMR and you have like a half decent win rate playing 10 games, by the end of those 10 games, you will be within 150 rating of 1500 or 1600, whatever you're at, roughly there. And you get like 1250 points or something. Because that's what I did on one of my rogues. I was like, okay, let's play 10 games and see where I'm at in this threes. It was super quick and it's just like, oh, okay, I guess we're done. I can go watch some MSI now, which is what I was doing that day. Yeah, it took like 20 minutes and we were done. So it was, if you guys want easy points, threes is the easiest because you don't have to coordinate 2 more extra people.
Or buy Chanimal. I mean, what?
Yeah. All advertise. Get the Chanimal experience. Chanimal, I want my cut for any of these.
Whoa. Whoa. Oh shit.
But yeah, so Zirene, how was your Sunwell launch week?
My Sunwell launch week was interesting. We didn't PTR. I PTR'd a little bit, so I had like a good idea of like what everything, like where everything was. And I had to like lead my guild a bit. I rated on almost all my characters. I didn't do it on at least one of my horde characters. And pretty much I remember one day one day I did a full raid up to kill Jaden on my Ellie Shaman, had to leave because my other raid was starting on my rogue. We went to kill Jaden. Sorry, not my rogue, my paladin. We killed Muru, killed Jaden after a bunch of attempts. And then my Rogues Guild pinged me and said, we're still trying to kill KJ. So I went from my Ellie Shaman all the way to KJ, didn't kill it, but they killed it without me. Then I played on my Paladin, killed Muru KJ. Once we killed KJ, my Rogues Guild pinged me and said, we didn't kill KJ yet. And it's like literally 3 a.m. And this is like a continued raid from the previous day. And then we hopped on, and I think we got it to 1%, 5%. And then one of the Drakes messed up what happened was, so what happened was somebody pressed the shield at like 5.2 seconds.
Oh,
right?
No.
And the other Drake saved him the first time. But what happened was, it was his last one. So what happened was the shield went up, then the other shield went up, the first shield fell, and it popped that guy out of the Drake because the Drake expired, and that guy died to the darkness. So the person who'd been controlling Drakes the entire time was dead. So we had to get somebody new who had never done it before. We're like, go pick up a Drake. Guy picked it up, and then he messed up the next shield, and then that killed us. So we actually should have wiped earlier, but one Drake saved it, and then the second time that Drake didn't get saved. So they died, lost it at 5%, didn't kill him that week. So it was a really interesting, very long day. And then people were coming into my chat going like, wait, did you change characters for KJ? I'm like, no, this is a different one. I literally was on KJ on 3 different characters that day on 3 different raids. So it was it was an interesting day. So that was my launch week.
You got a lot further than a lot of guilds, though. It's been fun watching the amount of guilds that they run into. First they run into Brutalis and Felmis that everyone wipes a couple times, especially if they're new there. It's normal, but then man, when Twins is like that first block, watching the casual guilds hit into Twins, and then you see, man, Twins is where in my guild at least, where we found out who doesn't understand how they need to watch threat, especially the range, because there's a lot of wipes on Twins where someone pulls
Twins
threat.
Is weird.
And then they
Twins
start
is weird.
away.
Like sometimes I vanish and it doesn't clear my threat.
Oh yeah, I have a whole video on that. Basically, like vanish is just bugged.
Where is this video?
Like...
Is this on youtube.com/snowme?
Yeah, it is on YouTube.
SNOMIE? Wow. Can I find all the rogue guides there?
That is where you can find all the rogue guides.
If I'm struggling in Sunwell, are these like good things for me to look at?
Oh, there's a new boss guide available right now, actually. But yeah, there's man, the Twins shows you how broken that is. Twins shows you how broken Vanish is, because like not only does threat like just like, I don't know why sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like sometimes the Vanish resets threat, sometimes it doesn't. I have no idea why. And then later in the fight, if you want to, you can actually vanish the conflag if you get picked as well. You can vanish it, but like at first I thought, oh, this is great. Anyone can vanish the conflag as a rogue. You just vanish it. But then you find out that for some people, the cast doesn't seem to interrupt when you vanish. And I don't know what factor causes it, but sometimes it interrupts when you vanish. Sometimes it doesn't interrupt and it continues the cast. You get hit, but it doesn't do damage, but it counts as you being conflag to everyone around you. So you can still kill everyone if the cast doesn't stop for whatever reason.
Weird.
And I don't know why sometimes it stops and sometimes it continues the cast. It doesn't.
That's really weird.
It doesn't make any sense. I have no idea why. So it's just super buggy there. But Twins, I really like Twins as a rogue because I get to bypass mechanics and such, as you do for all of Sunwell, honestly.
Yeah,
as a rogue.
I think I remember saying this like over a year ago, before TBC was out, where I was like, rogues in Sunwell are actually going to be good because you don't count. I remember even just specifically saying burn, like you don't count towards the number of melee in your raid typically, because people are like, oh, it's a melee unfriendly expansion. I'm like, rogues don't usually abide by that rule because they just avoid mechanics. Like you don't, it's like we have 10 melee. It's like, well, the rogue doesn't really count as one for burn because he just doesn't care about it every minute, which is basically the cadence of which he'll get it, and also the duration of burn. So there's no way he ever gets a burn that will tick for him for the final amounts. So it's like rogues are very easy to have in Sunwell. And usually a rogue is not the one responsible for wiping your raid. Rogue is like very easy warrior right now. Very easy warrior.
It's a very chill experience playing a rogue in Sunwell in that
very chill.
the melee already just don't really have that many important mechanics to worry about.
Yeah.
It's usually the other people worrying about that stuff. But then on top of that, you're a rogue who can now also cloak. You can also vanish. You can also improve sprint. So suddenly, all of these mechanics, you just like almost ignore them. And then on a lot of wipes as well, because after Twins is Muru. A lot of rogues don't know, but if you just, as your guild calls a wipe, if you just run to one of the corners and press vanish, as long as someone doesn't bring the mobs on top of you, you will survive the wipe as well.
Will you not get hit by negative energy?
You still get hit by stuff, and so you have to have enough HP to survive until everyone else is dead, but it just seems to just clear the threat, and then they just despawn after that. So, like, wiping on Muru was a fun experience for me because I got to do scrolls and everything, and then everyone died, and I just walked out of the room every time. It was great. After every wipe, I was typing in my group chat. Yeah, guys, it's a pity we lost our scrolls in that one,
sucks,
right, guys?
Bro, sucks.
Let's get our rebuffs out. Yeah, we definitely need to get those rebuffs back up.
Holy shit!
But yeah, and even on KJ, like if. A lot of guilds, they want to gather early because you might get hit by the slowy thing. Is it the darts that slow you?
Yeah, it's the flame darts.
Yeah,
until you have the dragon breath.
Yeah, so they ask to gather early so that people can waddle over and such, or they don't have to try to waddle over late.
Fire bloom isn't a thing you have to worry about.
It doesn't matter for the rogues because you can just improve sprint if you get stuck by it. You can cloak if you get hit by a fire bloom. It's just, man. The rogue life in Sunwell is super comfy, and as well as that, I've got the DPS chart open where the last 2 weeks of DPS rogues actually good again because we don't do mechanics, we just bypass everything and we just get to zug.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of trash, and so like overall isn't going to matter. This is all fights, right? This is all bosses.
This is all bosses. Yeah.
Some of the bosses really help you out. Like KJ is very, very, very good for rogues, right? And keep in mind, there are some bosses that are very bad for you, and yet you still do well. Like Felmist is not a very good rogue fight. You lose a lot of uptime when she's going up into the air, all that stuff. So it's very interesting that this is and I think these would probably be a little bit higher for some of the DPS if Caligos counted, or if you could count Caligos, right? Actually, because rogues do pretty well on Caligos as well. It's all single target anyway, right? Yeah, and then
does very well.
You don't have any, like, you don't worry about spell pushback or anything like that. Warriors would do well on it because they have infinite rage, because arcane buff it's good. Shadow volleys, things like that. So it would be pretty interesting.
Yeah,
but
it's been interesting looking at the DPS stuff because I'm not used to, as a rogue, I've just kind of gotten used to being near the bottom somewhere when I look at the DPS, overall DPS and such charts. But even after my raids, where I don't even have a glaive rogue, I look at the damage and I'm like, wait, I did pretty well. Like there was one raid I was like, wait, I'm top 3? What's going on here? I don't have glaives. And then I look at the glaive rogues and they're like, whoa, wait, this guy beat a warlock here. What's going on?
Yeah. Like we were what was it? Like we talked about this a long time ago too, where it was like in Karazhan, I was just sitting there going, rogue just feels terrible. Like I'm rupturing instead of evising. I have to stack hit, so I have no AP or crit or anything that feels like I'm like doing significant damage. I'm doing tiny bits of damage that all add up. But now it's like rogues actually truck. Rogues actually hit very hard. Your hit comes very easily, so crit and AP are much more available stats for you once you're hit capped, etc. And haste is your best stat, right? And haste is now a stat that's in the game. So I've expected this to happen to rogues and to warriors, especially because warriors, like I've always said, scale with literally every stat, right?
Oh yeah, warriors are going off right now. It's kind of crazy as well.
When you play a warrior at the start, you're just like, I generate no rage. I can't spam cleave. Now it's just like, what do I do with all this rage? Like you generate so much rage because armor pen helps you generate rage, AP, strength, crit, attack speed, haste, all that shit. All of it helps you generate more rage more quickly. So it's pretty cool how like melee starts doing better and better, but also like warrior being number 1 is always really funny to me. Also keep in mind with these graphs, this is like the upper limit when you're looking at the far right. So like the best warrior is better than all the other classes, right? Remember when people said warriors were bad? But the average warlock is better than the average warrior. So if you have like warriors in your guild and warlocks in your guild, Warlocks are probably going to, in your average guild, parse better than your average warrior, right? So it's like only the upper limits of those classes are really doing much better. And I actually usually like to look at the difference between the middle and the highest and how big that is on these box charts. Because for something like Warlock, it's not that big of a difference. If you look at where the line is in the middle of the box versus where the upper limit is for the Warlock with the dot, that's not that big. That is pretty close to how big Rogue's difference is, but the Rogue difference is a little larger. Obviously, there's some min-max things you can do on Rogue and watch your rotation. Not so much you can do with choosing between Shadow Bolt versus Seed. Yeah. Then you look at Warrior, and there's a larger difference there, but that comes with, you know, choosing when to cleave, how to position yourself, how risky you're going to play with Whirlwind and all that, and when sweeping strikes and you time your cooldowns, etc. And then there's Hunter, which Hunter is fucking huge. Hunter, I think, might have the largest difference besides Feral Druid between like the average Hunter and the best Hunter. And that's because Hunter is very fucking hard to melee weave on. Very, very, very hard to play at the highest limit. Like playing, I would not want to play Hunter and not melee weave, but I know I would be frustrated if I was trying to, because it is very hard to do, especially with things that change like procs, haste, all that stuff. So I think that the surprising things here for me are first and foremost just that, like the difference between the Hunter, the top Hunter, still not being like even better than the top Warrior. And then also Arcane Mages look pretty bad now, which is very sad. Yeah, because Arcane Mages were literally #1 in Kara. I believe they were #1 in SSC anti-K. Yeah. Maybe Warrior was up there too. And in Black Temple clears, I'm pretty sure they were still very close to #1, if not #1. So Arcane Mages are having a big fall from grace because the gear is just getting so dated, right? The gear is incredibly dated at this point. You're using gear from three phases ago, and you're having to keep it on. So people are like trying to find solutions. Like people knew this was going to happen anyway to mages. It's very hard to break their set bonus. They have to get all these pieces before they do. These numbers may change, and we'll see. But some people have been trying to preach Fire Mage. I don't know how good that will ever be. So yeah, you can see Fire Mage here. So, yeah. I don't know if there's any geared Fire Mages out there even, but keeping Scorches up doesn't seem like it's a good thing to have to like spend DPS on all that. Also less innervates. Well, I also know mages who like get a bunch of innervates and they last the entire fight. Because keep in mind, like if you look at the right of the graph, right, the dot, the top mage, who is probably a mage getting fed 3 innervates, having mana the entire fight, having like the best group possible, like the ideal mage, is still barely doing better than the best arms warrior. So it's like, it's very hard for them to compete right now, and trash is not really a thing. Okay, so I don't know if people are going to speedrun Sunwell, right? I don't know if they're going to speedrun Sunwell. I don't know how much they're going to speedrun Sunwell. Some groups have been running like 2 mages, 3 mages. I actually have a theory that running 0 mages may be best. You don't really need decurses, right? Their damage is lower than the other like 4 classes above them, right? Their damage is lower than that. They require innervates, and innervates are really good on healers right now. They also don't really need to decurse. Caligos has a curse, and that's about it. I don't really know of many of the decurses in Sunwell aside from like the mobs, the dogs on the way to Muru, right? And then the other thing on top of that is you don't need Arcane Brilliance, because once you've completed the Sunwell, like all the dailies and shit like we have on Benediction, you get Perma Fort and Perma Arcane Intellect while you're in Sunwell. So you don't need their AI buff either now. There may be benefit to Amp Magicking the whole raid with the Amp Magic talent. Keep the mage. All right, well, the mage is going to be because he's spamming Amp Magic on everybody, which has a 10-minute duration.
It's 10.
10 minutes?
Yeah, it's 10.
Okay. Mage lives matter. Okay, Ren, now we're getting real propaganda-y up in here. but that seems like the see, now it's like mages are at the point now where they're digging for finding what's beneficial or what they can even bring to the table. So this would be like bruh, just bring this mage and they're gonna.
Dude, the rogue sitting there in the corner is like, first time here, mages.
the rogue is like tagging the mage into the rogue is like coming out of the cage. He's like, here, hide here. And the mage is like, oh, is that where all the good gear is? He's like, yeah, come here, in here. Mage goes in, rogue closes the door behind him, goes, welcome. Look, I brought you here. Now you're in the cage. You enjoyed number one.
Exactly.
So
like
long.
chat says, welcome to Rogue outside of Phase 5. Welcome to Rogue outside of Phase 5.
Yep.
It's kind of sad that, man, like, finally Rogues are good, but we're in the last phase, and a lot of people don't really care that much anymore because we're in the last phase.
Hey, man. I mean, the problem is you would still never bring more than one rogue unless you're trying to get that other rogue to parse.
Yeah. Well, right? Yeah. I mean, the problem is like it's just like having extra melee in general is such a pain in the butt because you gotta account for
rogues
the
don't really
setups
count.
and
Rogues
such.
don't really count. I'll be completely honest. Rogues don't really count. They don't.
Well, I mean, for the buff setup is it's so hard to get. Like, you need an extra enhanced shaman usually to try to fit stuff in.
For those, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the buff setup for any extra melee is such a pain. And it makes it really annoying. But at least the mages aren't boomkins, Zirene, because I tell you what, the boomkin, having a dedicated boomkin is getting worse and worse value as we go. Like, when I look at the DPS numbers of the boomkin versus, like, man, you could just get the resto druid to go with the hybrid spec, and then you don't need the boomkin anymore.
Like boomkin is so bad it's worse than mutilate rogue.
Actually, that is impressive to be worse than mutilate rogue, because I played that. It was not great.
Yeah. Like, also, like, if you look at the things near the bottom here, right? Shadow Priest, Frost Mage, Elemental Shaman, like Balanced Druid. So we'll look at like Balanced Druid, like the real ones that are near the bottom, like Balanced Druid, Elemental Shaman, Frost Mage, or sorry, Shadow Priest instead of Frost Mage. Like, these are all the utility classes, right? Boomkin definitely brings like something that is very, very valuable with Imp Fairy Fire. You're gonna have Fairy Fire on anyway. And then they bring crit to the Warlock group, and they increase the Warlock's damage by 6%. And because the Warlocks are doing more damage than before, that buff is more valuable, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like the amount of damage the Boomkin brings plus take 6% of whatever the Warlocks do, because crit percentage basically equals that. Like 1% crit for a Warlock is basically 1% increased damage for almost all intents and purposes, minus like Imp Shadow Bolt uptime. So it's pretty close to that. It might be a little higher. And you can just kind of figure out how much your Boomkin is worth in that group versus having like another Warlock or an Affliction Lock. Right? Because Affliction Lock is actually not that bad. Affliction Warlock is actually pretty decent. And then they buff everybody else's damage by 3% too. Yeah. But then the Shadow Priest, same thing, right? They bring Misery. They bring shadow damage to the Warlock. So it's interesting to see like what a Shadow Priest can do for a group. And how much they're worth, even though they seem to be like the lowest out of all of them. So I think out of these, I guess I'll put it this way. Out of the supportive classes at the bottom with Balance, Druid, Elemental Shaman, Shadow Priest, I definitely think the worst one is probably Ellie Shaman. And I play one of those. And I'm pretty much being forced to go Resto now. Because Resto Shaman is like one of the best healers, top 2. And then Ellie is like one of the bottom 2 classes for DPS. And then the buff they bring to their group is 3% hit, 3% crit, and Warlocks aren't really struggling for hit. And they can build their set around it and get maybe a little more haste if they want, but you aren't bringing the same amount of value that like a Boomkin is to both the melee and that group. So Boomkins are buffing melee 3% hit, and then they're also, or physical damage dealers 3% hit, and then they're also applying the group-wide buff. So Boomkins actually get a little bit more. So it's Ellie Shamans are in a very, very rough spot. They've been the entire expansion, save for like at the very start.
The very start,
they were fun. They're fun in 10-mans. I love them in 10-mans, but good God, are they fucking terrible? Like, it's like, holy shit, they are bad.
But the only reason my guild has a full dedicated Boomkin still is that we felt bad forcing one of the druids to run the hybrid spec.
Dream State?
Yeah, Dream State, because that spec is not fun to play. There's a lot of guilds that report like, oh yeah, we got the druid to go the Dream State spec, and then he quit.
Yeah. Dream State, I actually think Dream State Druid is probably like the most quit spec, dude. I swear to God. Like, Dream State Druid is like, we had a guy who quit the game, had been gone for months, and then somebody messaged him. He can come. We want him back, and he can go. Like he was playing like Lost Ark and shit. He was playing Lost Ark and Psalm, dude. That's how bad that guy was, right? Or like how down bad he was to like play something else other than Dream State. He's playing Psalm. Fucking imagine that shit. And so we told him he could come back and play a tree, and then he came back immediately. So we were just like, wow, it really, like, people do not want to play Dream State. Yeah. Dream State is like not fun. Like, your healing isn't good. And then at the same time, you have to keep Fairy Fire up, and people will bitch at you the immediate second that Fairy Fire is gone. So and you don't get spell hit, so it might resist. So you got to refresh it early sometimes.
The fun of the class really, like, especially as a rogue coming into phase 5, it's very noticeable when you actually get to do fun things in the raid. You're actually like a high DPS dealer, or like you actually contribute more to the raid in invisible terms. Is actually a big difference in how fun the raids is. Because in the previous phases, when you come there as a rogue, you're like, oh yeah, I'm just doing my thing. I'm mid tier somewhere. Sometimes I can't even see myself on the DPS meter compared to the other guys. But then you get into Sunwell and suddenly like, oh, we're like doing good DPS. I'm topping the damage on some bosses and such, and it's like your enjoyment level goes up so much, even though like realistically you're not really doing anything different. It's just that now you get to show your value as the class. You're like, oh yeah, you guys didn't bring me here for no reason. I'm actually doing something. And
I'm actually doing something.
Doing something.
Hey guys, look at me. I'm doing something.
Which is a whole interesting topic because, man, the hunters hate me because I always say that a lot of hunters, like probably 9 out of 10, if you look at the casual guilds, are clipping their autos and such and not adjusting the haste properly. And in the rotation, which is honestly, I still stand by. That's a true fact. But it also applies to rogues. It also applies to warriors in that I think a lot of people forget that the average person isn't the average person you're talking to in like a class Discord. Because just the fact that you're in a class Discord talking with other people on how to play your class better already puts you like way above the average player. Like the average players, like if you look at like for rogue, for example, if you look at how many rogues are just dropping exposed armor and actually probably providing negative damage in some cases because they have so many gaps in the exposed armor uptime. And then you look at warriors who don't sunder like early, and like how much raid damage they're losing because they don't put it up the early sunders and such. Like the average player, man, if you go down the line and look at what they're actually doing is very different from what you expect the optimal play to be a lot of the times.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like average player is very different than the top player for most classes. So yeah, there's that big gap.
Do you think the casual guilds will beat? I guess I'll say Muru because Kill Jaden is easier than Muru. Do you think the average guild will beat Muru before they look at nerfing it at all?
Oh God! Well, you're basically asking me when do I think they're going to nerf it?
Yeah.
I think they're going to nerf it. I think they're not going to nerf it until it's pre-patch. That's what I think. I think they won't nerf it till pre-patch because, like, I mean, I'm obviously like a little different than the average player base. Like, I just played in a raid yesterday that did 1 hour and 4 minutes. So it was a world number 4.
That's a fast run, yeah.
But the day before, their run was world number 3. So like in Who, we just put up world number 3 and 4 times. And it was really funny because we were 3 seconds slower in the second run because we had like a 5-minute twin where we like 10-manned it. So really, people are going to be doing sub 1 hour very quickly here. I think Sunwell will eventually be done in like 45 minutes, maybe 40, because, you know, people might be speedrunning it, changing comps to like full warriors and shit. We'll see. But yeah, I definitely think it's going to be an interesting time. But I don't think they're going to nerf it. I think that Muru and Brutalis are really big walls, but those walls get much easier with experience, repetition, and gear that you get from even the first 2 bosses. So I don't know. I don't think the average guild will kill Muru, but I think that they won't nerf it before then. That's what I think. I have some faith that they enjoy the difficulty feed, or feeding us some difficulty and not getting rid of it too early, because there was a lot of pushback originally when they did like the whole Kael'thas and Vaj nerfs of how it's too easy now and all that stuff. But it came at like a time where we were sitting there for, a month or two with nerfed versions of them. So I definitely think that people will. I think that they won't nerf it until pre-patch. I guess I'll just stand on that statement there. I think that they won't, and the reason I think they won't is because enough people are killing Sunwell, killing it quickly. It is much harder than anything else in TBC. Yes, this was or should have been expected, based on like stories and stuff. I know that people back in the day were all like, "Oh, this was very hard," or this was, and then it turns out it's just like Mag Therid and people needed to click. But yeah, well, I think it took an average of like. It takes like 48 wipes to kill Muru.
Yeah, I was about to mention that. Yeah, it takes something in the round of 50 wipes for the average guild to actually get Muru. So a lot of that is just like the progression. And I see people in chat just talking about it's almost like it's a shared experience with everyone, where we're like, yeah, everyone's wiping on twins and Muru. Because you got to get past twins first, and then once you get past twins, you got all the wipes, the 50 wipes you got to do on Muru for the average guild to actually beat. Because it's been interesting watching, especially from a rogue perspective, because the wipes are basically never my fault. I have no impact on the fight besides providing DPS. So it's been interesting watching, oh no, this guy didn't get heals quick enough, or this person pulled threat, or this person didn't do a mechanic. And and you just sit there as a rogue going, well, I did my job. and you just wait for the to run back. But it's been really fun. I really enjoy the progression. Actually, even since I haven't been raiding on my progress toon at all, so I get to experience the full semi-hardcore casual raid where we did wipe like 50 times on Muru before we got it.
The semi-hardcore casual raid?
Yeah, I say semi-hardcore casual because
that's literally they're all three. Yeah. They're semi-hardcore, they're casual, and they're hardcore.
I love the semi-hardcore designation because if you look at anything that isn't like a progress or like a hardcore guild, they all say they're semi-hardcore. And then you can't all be semi-hardcore. There's going to be some casuals.
Nobody likes to say they're a relaxed guild because or like a not hardcore guild, because it implies you can't kill all the content. Nobody likes saying they're a casual guild because it implies
everyone's semi-hardcore.
People just don't like doing that. It's not good for recruitment. It's sad. Even if you can kill everything and you say you're a casual guild, people like take it less seriously, right? Yeah. And as a GM, that's like the last thing you want. So
yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm really curious to see when the casual guilds get Muru, because my guild has reinstated our channel. We used to have a channel we called Dad Guilds, where you post Twitch feeds, because people love watching guilds wipe. So it's literally just
really do
feeds and feeds of different Twitch streams where people like Dad Guilds are just wiping to Muru or twins over and over again.
That was like a what was it in League of Legends? It was like Salty Timo.
Oh yeah, Salty Timo.
Take bronze games all day. Like just finding people wiping on like Muru streams all day. Oh no.
It's fun progression though, because it doesn't feel as consequential a lot of the times, because it feels like unless you're doing scrolls, if you're doing scrolls and wiping constantly, that gets expensive. But outside of that, it doesn't feel really that bad to be wiping a lot of the cases. It doesn't.
I also think too bad. Sunwell's gonna like really interesting for speedruns. One, because it's mostly bosses. Two, Sunwell, once you get Sunwell on farm, it will be the cheapest out of all the raids in TBC, aside from like Groll and Mag, and Kara and stuff like that, and ZA obviously, like all the 25 mans that aren't just one boss. It will be the cheapest to run. It is fast. You don't sapper like all these fucking packs over and over again. It is going to be the cheapest, right? It is very quick. Doing it in an hour and 4 minutes yesterday, I can tell you immediately, I'm sitting there like, oh, I didn't even have to like re-up my 1 hour elixir, right? At all. So it's like, it's going to be very, very cheap. You don't go through a ton of sappers or anything like that. Arcane bombs are probably like the biggest price tag that there is there. So I'm just like, this is going to be very, very fast, very cheap. But right now it's pretty expensive to keep wiping, but flasks are cheap and flasks are a thing. I actually think the Mark of the Illidari stuff was actually really, really good.
Yeah, it has been very
just
good
in general.
Like just
like having an accessible consume that rewarded you for having a reputation, which by the way, do want to comment on the reputation change as I've leveled another character recently. It's good that you can do heroics with just honored, but please, the helm enchant should also be honored.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah, you do need.
Don't make me get revered with fucking Shatar and do Botanica 5 times or 6 times to get the helm enchant. I'm in full BT gear and I don't have a helm enchant. Like, fuck. And then I'm like, what's the tank one? Oh, Caverns of Time. Oh, that's not going to be really fun to do.
Oh, the Caverns of Time one is fun because when everyone was porting over to Hydro, you saw who didn't bother grinding out the the rep, and they were like, guys, I need a summon, please. I didn't grind out my rep for this portal usage.
Yep. No rep for me.
But yeah, it's man, it's been fun. Like people in the chat are saying, a lot of the fights, it just comes down like. It just wipes. Literally, people just have to understand the mechanic and they're good. Like Twins is just literally the range. In a lot of cases, you just have to learn. Like, hey, just chill. Just chill for a second. Don't pull threats so that we can actually kill this guy and we're good. And a lot of the times it just comes down to simple stuff like 1 or 2 people realizing that, and it's pretty good. But it's been fun. All right, before we get to the next topic, we do have a sponsor this week. So thank you again, Manscaped. Gentlemen, Father's Day is around the corner and our friends at Manscaped are here to ensure all the father figures out there are looking daddy material this June. Manscaped's Performance Package 4.0, which includes their signature Lawnmower 4.0, is the perfect bundle to tackle any and all old man hair from head to toe. This right here is no dad joke. Treat him and yourself and join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PREPARED at manscaped.com. Trust me, his dad bod will thank you. Manscaped is designed with fathers in mind, and the Performance Package 4.0 is here just in time for your pop special day. So inside this package, you find your Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Revival toner, Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold his goodies. So first off, let me start by saying that the Lawnmower 4.0 will be the official MVP of Father's Day. The 4th generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to the advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 is waterproof and has a handy spotlight for a more precise shave. Now, does your dad use the same trimmer for his body and face? Let's throw that out the window and give him the upgrade he deserves. But wait, there's more. Manscaped just launched their brand new Boxers 2.0 that are, dare I say, the best boxers ever. So we know dads love their comfort. With summer just around the corner, these Boxers 2.0 are here to save every father from the uncomfortable heat. These new boxers are packed with revolutionary features, including the jewel pouch, designed to cradle his boys in their own special space. This right here is a game changer. So whether he's mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, or golfing in the sun, these moisture-wicking boxer briefs breathe without breaking a sweat. So dads, buy this for yourself. Sons, buy this for you. And your dad, ladies, buy this for your man. And dog daddies, you deserve this treat too. So get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PREPARED at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code PREPARED. So yeah, thank you so much Manscaped for sponsoring this podcast. And thank you for all of you guys who have bought from Manscaped. Like I said before, as a sponsor, I'm really happy about because it's something that I didn't realize that I would use and like this much until I got it. And then I started using it and realized, oh man, this is actually really nice to have these waterproof lawnmower shavers that I can just shave and just wash off in the sink or the shower. It's just really nice. The whole package is really nice, and I really do like the sponsor. So thank you, Manscaped. All right, let's go on with the show. But I feel like some of this comes down into like what else we're going to talk about today, which is the whole Brian Birmingham interview.
Yeah.
That he did with Rafa the Lich King. For people who don't know, Brian Birmingham is now actually the lead of Classic WoW. And Holly Longdale, who was formerly kind of running Classic WoW, is now like head honcho of WoW, it seems. I think is how their roles have swapped up. Something like that. Is that Holly Longdale got a promotion, it seems, and then Brian Birmingham took the spot of Classic lead now. So it's been interesting because I think what we're about to see in this interview, because basically this interview, he just went through answering a lot of questions like looking for group, racial changes, like what do we have planned for Wrath, and what is our philosophy for making changes. A lot of this comes down to what I'll say is what I see in WoW a lot, in that some of the things that make WoW really good are also what makes WoW not work. Or rather, some of the things that make us look fondly on WoW sometimes, or nostalgic on WoW, are also some of the things that break WoW as a modern game and don't allow it to be like as popular as it could be, or don't allow it to get a modern audience in a lot of ways. Where it's almost like it's fighting itself. On one hand, you have like this nostalgic WoW that you don't want to break. But on the other hand, if you don't break some of these things in nostalgic WoW, the modern audience does not want to play WoW for very long. So it's like this weird balancing act that they're trying to constantly do with classic WoW in particular. But yeah, so I thought we'd just go through the main points. Is that you read this, right, Zirene, the Brian Birmingham interview?
Yeah, I read it.
Yeah.
So
the first thing they cover is the looking for group tool. Basically, it's been a big controversy with the Dungeon Finder stuff, where they said, we're going to remove Dungeon Finder from Wrath of the Lich King. There was a lot of pushback from people who look at Dungeon Finder as a nostalgic thing that was in the Wrath period. But at the same time, I rate this as not bad. Yeah, I kind of reserve judgment, because they said that, we're taking out Dungeon Finder, but we're going to add in a better looking for group tool. So it's kind of like they're saying they're gonna make it better. So it's kind of a wait and see for me. What are your thoughts on this one, Zirene? Because they kind of said like, don't worry guys, we know the looking for group tool in Classic isn't being used right now, and it's not that great, but we're gonna put something better to try to make up for removing Dungeon Finder. So what are your thoughts?
My thought is, I know that people think that Dungeon Finder was really bad, but I don't God, I don't want to say this. I don't think human nature lends itself to not wanting Dungeon Finder, but also if Dungeon Finder were a thing, to not have it like ruin some of your enjoyment, right? So they have to find like a different way to do it. So basically I'm saying like people naturally want Dungeon Finder, but when they have Dungeon Finder, it's going to in some way diminish the community sense. So they have to find a way to give Dungeon Finder to people, or want to give it to them, in a way that's not going to spoil things or ruin this aspect of the game that it will naturally sort of progressively erode. So I don't envy that position, but I do think that he more or less is correct on like this, right?
Yeah. So for people that are trying to understand it, basically they're saying that they want to remove Dungeon Finder because they feel it's one of the big things that took away from the community aspect of WoW, and they're trying to figure out how can they preserve this for longer in Wrath of the Lich King, so that you don't feel like WoW is just like, for people that have logged into retail recently, you log into retail, you never talk to anyone, you just queue into the Dungeon Finder for retail, and there's like no group interaction or anything really. You just kind of go do it's like a solo player Skyrim game in retail a lot of the times. So they're trying to make sure that doesn't happen in Classic, and that's why they're removing Dungeon Finder. But at the same time, they're saying, hey, we're gonna fix looking for group tool. So we're just, it's kind of like, like I said, we're waiting and seeing what are they gonna do. But I think generally, I think it's a good change, assuming the looking for group tool that they add in is like good. Like they add in something that's good to replace the fact that there's no Dungeon Finder, because as we know right now, literally everyone's still using looking for group bulletin board and all of that. No one uses looking for group tool on TBC. So it needs to be different for sure if they want it to be actually used and useful in Wrath of the Lich King. Because I think there's a lot of tweets out. I think I saw one from Van Rookie and some other people, I believe, where they're like, really, I'm going to go into Wrath of the Lich King with... they're just showing like the spam in the looking for group channel. I'm going to have to use this to try to navigate in Wrath of the Lich King. But they are saying that they're going to try to improve it, which I think is I like to see. I think it's good to see that Blizzard is actively making these changes, because the alternative is that they keep doing what they did in Classic, which is not do anything until it's too late. So at least this time they're doing it proactively before Wrath comes, hopefully. So yeah, I think we're both kind of happy with that. And they did say they're gonna work on the lockout stuff as well. So the second thing they brought about is like
that was an interesting one.
Yeah, I actually didn't really think about that until I read the interview. I was like, yeah, okay, so they're going to try to address the issue in that if you're a min-max player, you're gonna try to min-max your raid lockouts, which is gonna lead to like a crazy amount of like trying to min-max with your like your raiding with like the different raid sizes and everything to try to get all.
It's what happened. It's one of the reasons I quit during Trial of the Grand Crusader, because you did 10, 25, 10 heroic, 25 heroic, and all the gear, like he said, was better than stuff in Old War. So you basically didn't want to do Old War almost ever again. So I don't know if that's like nerf the gear, buff the gear. But then he also said something where it was like they were looking at potentially doing something like they did in Old War, where you activate hard mode and that is your lockout. So you don't do like 10-man heroic and 10-man normal. You do 10-man hard mode if you choose to, and that's your lockout. Or if you do 10-man normal, you're not doing hard mode, right? Because it was like the same lockout for Old War, where you would like activate the stuff or do the bosses in a way where it was the harder version, right? So it was not like you came back and did heroic mode.
Yeah. Overall, when I look at this, I think I at least I appreciate what they're trying to do here, because what they're really trying to do is they're trying to protect the min-max player from min-maxing himself out of the game. Basically, because as we know, the modern crowd, they play the game very differently. And if you give someone an opportunity to min-max and it feels like they need to do this thing to be at the peak of the game, they're going to do it even if it makes them hate the game. So what they're trying to do here is say, hey, we're going to try to balance this so that you can still min-max, you can still push and such, but you don't feel so obligated to do all these things to be a peak player. And that's, I think it's smart, because it's what happened in Classic WoW with the raid buffs and everything, where it got to the point where the min-max players were burning themselves out super hard being min-max players. And they're trying to limit that from happening as much in Wrath, which I think is good. Right, like I think it's good if you gotta like we've said before on the podcast, you gotta protect the people from themselves a lot of times from min-maxing the fun out of the game. Yeah, then we're starting to get into the controversial stuff though, because people were happy about the first two stuff generally, what he said, or they could at least understand. But then you get into the later half where, man, it made a lot of people mad with the rest of the interview in a lot of ways. When you start talking about racial changes and faction changes. So here they start talking about why there's no racial change or faction change at the start of Wrath of the Lich King, and they start going down this interesting path where they say, well, it doesn't make sense in the lore for that to be there.
That was a weird one for me.
Which was very weird. Like, I really do not understand the lore segment, because I was telling chat earlier, just conjure up a powerful mage to do something in the lore. It feels like, yes, lore is important, but lore is just one of the factors. And what's much more important is you make the changes that people want and would be beneficial for the game. And then you can add the lore on top of that, but you got to have the fundamental thing working first before you can try to attach lore to it and be like, oh yeah, now this makes sense, right? It's like you can't put the lore before just the fundamental way that the game needs to run.
Yeah.
And it was very weird to say that it had to be a lore issue. Like it has to make sense in the lore. Because I think as much as like Zirene's someone that enjoys like the attachment to characters and such, but even Zirene, I don't think would pick lore over just having good changes to the game.
Yeah. What they said about like, there's no lore reason to have like a Tauren suddenly become a gnome. And I'm like,
there's a powerful
when
mage?
have they cared about, since when have they cared about things like that? Like the RP community is a small fraction of the community. They don't have to change. And if they wanted to, they could add flavor. I got a race change, they could do whatever they wanted there with like, hey, the Tauren became a gnome or something, or he found a magical well or whatever, or he saw the light and changed factions, or changed sides. I don't know. There's just something like people will find a way to make it interesting for them. And I think that I definitely think that it's a weird kind of excuse, or they're worried about something that I don't think is a problem at all. I think that going to the main meat of what he says argument wise, I thought this was just weird. I thought it was like something where it's like you're probably a little bit too worried about this, and it's kind of a non-factor, right? Nobody's gonna go, this doesn't make sense. Like, it makes more and more sense over time for it to be a video game that people want to play the way they do. It makes no sense for you to limit somebody who rolled a gnome in Classic for PvP, and now gnome is like the worst PvP warrior like a worse version of human in Wrath of the Lich King. It's like, yeah, well, what? It makes no sense for somebody who wants to like min-max. And he does address that, where he's like, people feel more attachment to their accomplishments more than their character, right? Because those people are just going to re-roll character anyway. And I'm sitting here going, is this a way to like milk boosts? Like, what is the angle? I don't want to be like, cynical and be like, oh, they're trying to milk boosts, right? Or they're like, boosting a new character is a solution. I'm like, it is a way to do it, but also you can make money just having people transfer their character or change their character. I know it's more work on their end, but it was a feature that ended up existing. So I'm a little bit like confused. I know they're worried about faction imbalances for things like Winter Grasp and haven't really figured out what they're going to do with it. So I'm scared that they're going to get this very wrong. And I know that people are already very worried about that too.
Yeah, people. I've heard from some people who are really scared. They're like, should we go back to no changes? Should we go back to no changes? Because I don't know what Blizzard's going to do. This doesn't make sense.
Well, they're scared about the no changes thing because they're sitting there going, his proposed solution is, and I actually do want to say, just so like people understand where I stand on this, I don't think that changing the human racial is the right move, but from a game design perspective, I do understand why he's come to that conclusion, because it is the right one, right? From a game design perspective, having worked with game designers, having been in the video game industry, I can tell you, video game designers are constantly thinking about how to solve the real problem instead of treating a symptom. The problem is people are upset about no race changes. Why are they upset? They're upset because they want to be human for PvP. Mostly, the large majority of PvPers are upset about that. And it's like, well, so is that a race change problem or is that a human racial problem? And the answer is it is a human racial problem. The human racial is strong. Should they change it? No, it's a key part of like Wrath of the Lich King, right? If they want to do that, if they want to nerf that racial, then people are going to be like, they have to nerf how good horde racials are in PvE, if that's the case. So I think there's like I think he has the right conclusion. I just don't think it's one where you should be considering it a problem in the first place. I think that race changes were already the solution to it. And the game, in the state that it's in, humans were strong, and humans were strong for a reason, right? Yeah. They were like the front and center characters, kind of like how like orcs have been strong for a long time. The stun, all that stuff, orcs in retail. It's like people can ask for these to be nerfed and stuff, but when you're doing like a historical or a classic version of the game, I don't think that's the time to do it. Now, let me explain what I think should happen. What I think should happen is they should allow race changes, right? I think that when they do Wrath of the Lich King, at the end of Wrath of the Lich King, instead of doing Kata, which I doubt they will do Kata Classic, instead of doing Psalm, maybe they'll end up trying to do like an evergreen version of Wrath of the Lich King. I don't know, right? But what I think they should do, and what I want them to do, is basically split off into WoW 2 and continue the lore from there without doing Cataclysm, without messing up Azeroth, right? I think that they should do something where, Arthas maybe isn't completely gone. They still have ties to Warcraft 3 lore in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you do parts of Shadowlands that are good, and you do like the whole Uther, continue that storyline with Uther and Arthas once Uther has actually like gotten his justice on Arthas, which was a very great storyline, but never saw anything really come of it in Shadowlands, which was really upsetting. So I think that I think that there's really great juicy lore things that I think if they like lore so much, they can continue WoW off of Wrath of the Lich King in a way that I think will resonate with Warcraft 3 fans and people who love the game and love the lore. So I think they should do that. That basically the Classic Plus. That is when I think they should address things like human racial. That is when I think they should do that. because you're no longer playing Wrath of the Lich King. You're playing a new game. You're playing Classic Plus. You stay at level 80. And now you're continuing the story, the lore, adding new instances, changing classes in some way, shape, or form slightly, doing balance changes, kind of like how, fucking League of Legends does it every 2 weeks, doing balance changes and tweaking things, right? So that's what I think should happen. That is my ideal setup of how Wrath of the Lich King goes. Go through the expansion, kind of leave it more or less the way it is with quality of life changes to things like arena teams and whatnot. But when it comes to human racial, leave it alone until you do Classic Plus. That's what I think they should do.
They have the racial change as an official part of Wrath of the Lich King anyway the first time around. Yeah. It just came in later in, right? So that's why the argument is really weird. If you're going to argue the lore segment, it came in anyway in Wrath. So all you're really doing is changing the time it comes into a little bit earlier, which it makes sense for a lot of people coming in. They've been playing Classic for 2 years. They didn't really optimize or pick what they wanted at the start of Classic now for Wrath, right? It's a long time to be prepping. I don't know anyone that prepped for Wrath in at the start of Classic Phase 1. The only psychopaths that might do that is maybe like Fearblade, if you're in the chat, who's like a rank 1 hunter who I think like early on in TBC was already prepping his mining setup for Wrath of the Lich King. He's like normal people don't do that. No, people don't do that. So I think what sheds a little bit of light on this is actually I was looking at the Twitter feeds and things. And early on, before this interview, like on May 8th, someone did tweet at Brian Birmingham asking, can you clarify on some things regarding Wrath of the Lich King Classic? Like, me and the boys need to know 2 things. Will faction change be available like it was in Wrath of the Lich King? If not, could you drop the barrier for PvP servers to allow Horde and Alliance characters on the same server? Because that is an issue if you're gonna, if you're gonna be on the same server, particularly like a Firemaw where it's popular for both factions. It's an interesting conundrum if you need to transfer that character off so that you can then roll ally on that server. It makes things really weird there if you're locked to just Horde or Alliance on that side. But basically he just replies and says, no, we're not really planning that for now, and then we'll make more announcements as we do. But later on, other people start replying to him, and he basically saying like, why does this make sense? Like, I was hoping you'd reconsider this, etc. But then his reply was the most telling to this. Is he says, I honestly do think it's part of the Classic ethos. In saying that it's part of the Classic ethos that this is the way it's supposed to be, that you don't get the racial change. He says, particularly that your account is a collection of characters with unique stories that feel like they exist in a world that feels real, even if it's a fantasy. There's no in-world reason your character can change their race. And that's where he kind of lost me at the end when he says there's no in-world reason your character can change your race. And to me, it comes off, and to a lot of other people, it came off a lot as someone who's really doesn't understand his demographic at this point. For me, it came off as it's kind of what I would expect to see from.
There's no in-world reason why the god that controls me can spend real life money and get money in game. I'm just saying, like, WoW token wise, there's no in-world reason why I have to have my god pay money to control me. So
yeah, it's just
there's a lot of things that are just.
It was very man, especially because this came in the later half of the interview. But I saw this tweet before already, and it was like I got like goodwill from looking at the first like changes. They're like, oh, okay, they're looking for group tool. Like, I might not love it, but at least they're being proactive, and then they're changing lockouts. That's good. And then you get to this stuff, and I think, man, this is what I expect out of someone who almost just got fresh out of business school, and instead of working on the core fundamentals of their game, they're making business cards and giving business cards out to people. It's like really weird focusing on this stuff, and it's how I would expect someone to look at the game if they don't understand the marketing segment or like how they're supposed to be building the game for their core audience. The reason I say this is because it feels like in this case, it doesn't seem he understands the model, which is if you're running a business or you're building a game, you should have an idea in your head of this is my person that I'm building this game for, right? You have your ideal customer. Every good business should have this where whoever's in charge needs to know this is my core audience. This is who I build the game for. And if you say these things like there's no in-world reason why your character can change their race and you say it's part of the classic ethos, it feels more like he's building classic for himself, which is a common mistake a lot of business people make and business owners make, and not actually building classic for his core audience. It's like he's got his own take on classic, and he's not actually kind of taking in what the majority are really saying in that case. And I think that's just a major mistake, and it's very worrying. It's very worrying. It enough so that when I saw that tweet, I actually went to my timeline because I like to be prepared for like my content and like my next. I have like a 6-month plan, a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, and such for like how I'm developing my business and all my content and such. And then I got rid of everything non-essential to my WoW timeline. And I was like, okay, I gotta get out quicker. I'm gonna move this other stuff up because it really worries me about the future of the game when it looks like whoever's in charge of Classic and in charge of WoW is thinking this way, and they're not really looking at the ideal customer and building the game the way it should probably be like looked at and built.
I just think it like I said, it just seems like a really weird like reason for it. I feel like it's out of touch, like you said. Like I definitely agree that it feels like it's it just doesn't make any sense of why you would really want to have that happen, right? Like why would you want to bar your player base from doing a change because of an in-game reason? I don't think they've never seemed that attached to the lore. They've never seemed like that. Like in my opinion, the lore, if it's getting in the way of like good game design choices, it's going to just keep the game in an archaic state. So it feels like this is something where it just only applies to this situation because they want it to, and not to other things. Like, I mean, is that the same thing they're going to say? Like, that's why LFG doesn't exist, or the raid dungeon finder doesn't exist? I don't know. It just feels like they're picking and choosing. I really don't like it. I don't feel like it makes sense. I feel like it doesn't make sense, and I feel like it doesn't really strengthen their argument, and just makes them look out of touch. And then you talked about like how it's like kind of changing your plans and shit. You're losing trust. Like,
I'm heavily losing trust. Like I had not a whole lot of trust left over, but I looked at that and like, oh god, that is not good for the. Like, it's what I expect from like a random developer in WoW maybe, or like a random person at WoW, but it's not what I expect from the lead of classic WoW to have this sort of vision, right? Like I would hope that my lead of like this giant game has a better vision and has a better understanding of his customer base than what I saw, really. But I mean, oh man, to shift gears, I guess, before we go too far into this, is that at least the Wrath of the Lich King beta date is kind of semi-confirmed.
Oh, yeah.
So Holly Longdale replied in one of the interviews that said, we're really excited to get Wrath on beta in the next 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
So that means the beta is going to be coming out, which means, Wrath, they're really pushing this Wrath out quickly. We're going to get that really quick, it seems.
Seems like Wrath is going to be pretty big. Like a lot of people are coming back for it. Like my girlfriend's roommate literally was playing classic WoW, and she was like, I didn't know you fucking played. And he's like, yeah, I'm getting ready for Wrath. I'm like people are actually getting ready for Wrath. I'm like, holy shit. Like even people who aren't like big like WoW nerds or anything like that, or like super WoW nerds, everybody liked Wrath of the Lich King. So it's really the one that launched WoW into the streamline or the mainstream.
Yeah. Because I think like originally like WoW was building up speed the entire time, and then you hit Wrath, and it was kind of like that was the peak where the most people were playing at that point.
People thought it was like the final like the apex, the crescendo, right? Because it was based in the lore where we fought Illidan already. We're going after like Arthas, right? The main I guess antagonist of the Warcraft series, Warcraft 3 series. So it was and Warcraft 3 kind of ended on that cliffhanger too, where he he basically was now the Lich King and had come to full power. And so people really wanted to see like what had happened to the world afterwards, what it's like. And I remember when original classic WoW came out, people were like, where's Arthas? right? Like, where's Arthas? Where's Northrend? Northrend doesn't exist here. Why isn't Northrend like part of the game? Because that was a huge part of Warcraft 3. So yeah, I think a lot of people will definitely come back for this, and it's going to be really big. So I'm excited about it. I want to see what happens. So.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But all this does lead into the Sunwell physical contested item sheet that we mentioned earlier. So it makes it interesting for loot decisions in that Wrath is coming so quickly that it makes it very interesting when deciding, because sometimes some choices that you should make logically, you might not necessarily make it in a less hardcore guild, because suddenly it's not just about the loot, but it's about people wanting BIS items before Wrath. It's about some people might not care about loot anymore, and you're trying to give them incentive to keep logging in so that they don't leave before Wrath. You're trying to get up new people. There's a whole bunch of things kind of getting thrown in there. So what I have here on the screen for people that haven't seen, this is the Dean's physical item comparison sheet. So there's kind of like two versions floating around. That there was an early version that was kind of built by Hunter Discord before this version was finished. That guy, there were some mistakes made on that one, because that was kind of like a cobbled together sheet that was just grabbing numbers from everywhere. The sim data wasn't all the same. So the big thing about this sheet that we built here is that all the people use the same settings, the same fight lengths. They tried to make intelligent gear swaps for everything, and you got one person from each class making sure that the sims are correct, basically. So that because fight, like even like comparing like one item of a trinket or something, and someone simmed it at 2 minutes, one person simmed it at 3 minutes, it can completely change the DPS values so that they're not comparable. So the most important thing with comparing the DPS gain of an item is that everyone has the same thing. And I can link in the chat. For people on YouTube, this will be in the description as well for people that want it. But yeah, so we didn't do one for all the classes because most of us, it was too much work, honestly. People did so much work doing these sheets. And thank God that Wherefore from the Rogue Discord did all the sims, so I didn't have to do the Rogue segment, because it's literally so much work simming all this stuff. But basically what we have is all the items in Sunwell here are sorted by the DPS gained by the class versus like the next best options and such, are simmed for both the low armor bosses and the high armor bosses as well. And if people want to see, there's links also to like the baseline gear used and such in the sheet. But at least for my guild, we've been using the 6200 armor segment mainly because the majority of Sunwell is 6200 armor. I think there's only two bosses. I think, is it Brutalis and maybe Entropius segment in Mirror? I think are the only two higher armor mobs. Everything else is 6200 for the bosses. And I know it's not quite 6200. It's like 61 something or whatever, but it's we just put 6200 for a nice easy value. But I think what's really interesting here, Zirene, I just want to see what your takes are. We don't have to go through everything, but I want to see what your takes are for like the big ticket items, like in particular things like the legs, and which I think is like the biggest big ticket item for a lot of people.
Leggings of Immortal Knight.
Leggings of Immortal Knight and the alternatives and such, because it's the biggest DPS increase for a lot of classes is leggings. Yeah. And there's been a lot of back and forth because it's BIS for everyone, basically, but side BIS for like warriors have the biggest case for not getting it. Although I have seen some warriors still want it, but because warriors have the Fel Fury legs, which are comparable. It's not BIS depending if you go higher armor or not, but they're close. But yeah, I'm curious to see what would you say is the where would you put like your 1, 2, 3 distribution if you got 3 Immortal Knight legs for your guild?
1, 2, 3?
Yeah, like the first 3 drops. Where would you put yours? What isn't listed here though is that they are by far and ahead one of the best upgrades for bear tanks as well. Because they trade them in for like the tanking legs, but I know the bears really, really want this as well.
I would probably give it to a rogue very early on. They are like guaranteed to make use of all the stats on it in pretty much all situations, and they don't really have any other good legs. Like their T6 doesn't have any hit on it. It allows them to swap some stuff. I'm pretty sure it's one of the biggest ones. Like, yeah, even looking at both of them. Yeah, at both of them, it's the largest jump from second BIS to BIS in both situations. So it's over 100 DPS increase, almost 130 if you're still using T6, and didn't get like the Scryer retainer, like 100 Badge of Justice pants or whatever they are. 88 on the other one, which is still the second highest. So I would definitely give it to Rogue first. Probably one of the first times I've ever said that. I would definitely give it to Rogue first, and then I would probably give it to a Fury Warrior second.
Over the Bear Tank?
I mean, Bear Tank is something else. So for threat, like Bear Tanks, I don't know how much they're struggling for that. I don't know how much I really.
It's a mitigation upgrade for them, not
it's a midi upgrade. Okay.
Yeah. It's
how much of a mitigation upgrade is it?
Though? Compared to the next closest mitigation item, it's like double.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like it's a big pickup, but this is with the asterisk that it depends on which mitigation setup the Bear Tank is going for, because Bear Tanks can go for a PvP setup where they actually don't necessarily use the legs in that setup because they do 2-piece PvP, and then they need the other slots for tier and such.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would probably go Rogue, Warrior, and I would give my arms the Fell Fury leg plates. Maybe. Well, here's the thing, right? If I were a GM, I'd probably be running more Fury Warriors than other people because I like Fury Warriors.
So you're talking in like a hardcore guild, like the Zirene hardcore guild.
Yes, if I were the person in charge of the loot, it would go to a Rogue. I don't know why we have one, but we do. And then it would go to a Fury Warrior, and then an Arms Warrior, and then I would probably ping pong it around after that. Because I know it's like one of the biggest upgrades for like enhancement and stuff like that if I was going purely off of that. But I feel like the Fell Fury leg plates would just be like a throwaway to the Arms Warrior. So one of the things about Fell Fury leg plates as well is it's not usable by other classes aside from the Warriors and maybe the Ret. Because like a Ret wouldn't get it because Fell Fury leg plates is their BIS, right?
Yeah, and I mean the DPS difference to Fell Fury legs. If there's the whole segment of like wasting the Fell Fury legs as well if you don't give them to the plate users for having that close alternative. Then it just kind of like
I would have a lot of plate users is the problem here that I'm running into, right? Is like I would run a lot of plate users. So I don't think I'm gonna run out of like candidates for that too quickly. Yeah, let me think about that. I think I would go Rogue. Then I would probably go Fury because I'm going to give Fell Fury leg plates to Ret, and then I'm probably going to give it to Arms, Fell Fury leg plate wise. And then after Fury, I would probably give it to Enhance, and then I would probably bounce back to Fury and then BM eventually. Yeah, Hunter hater.
Do keep in mind before like people like rage in the comments. Zirene's talking about his like very melee warrior heavy comp here, not like a typical guild. So that's why he's doing it that way. Like for me, I was looking at the list thinking, man, what would I do? I think for sure, I think the Rogue. If there's ever an item that the Rogue can argue for prior for, it's got to be this. Although it's interesting as you go into the more casual guilds. Because like my current guild on White Main is more on the casual side now than hardcore. And what we looked at was as well as that we weren't sure how much we would actually count the secondary option. Like for example, hunters can get Starstalker and Bow Stitch and such. Like we didn't really look at that as a different option because for some of them it's also incentive for them to keep playing right now. It's that like the end of the phase. Some of them, they haven't gotten loot in like a long time for some of our hunters and such.
I mean, there's always compounding factors when it comes to loot. It's never as simple as give it to them.
Yes, there's so many compounding factors. So that even though I would never recommend that they go to hunter over a rogue, I think we might end up giving the first set to a hunter in that particular case because we're not counting like that they're going to get Starstalker necessarily because we don't know how many more clears we're going to do of X and like with Raphael Lich King coming and us being more casual and not having to like necessarily min-max the DPS gains as much. That's how we went. But in an ideal world, I think it would go like Rogue first, potentially Bear Tank second. But I think like with the arena changes and everyone getting so many points now, like it's more in the guild's interest to just have the bad tank go the PvP set, and if he can't get the rating needed for that, you can just use the guild bank to buy a boost for him
Or-
up to 2k or something.
Exactly. Buy a boost from Chanimal.
Everything, all roads lead back to Chanimal. Okay, yeah.
I'm sure he knows Feral Rogue, you know, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, it's it seems to be that way because the big thing is that, man, there's so many contested items is the tricky part in this phase, in that like you can set the prio for the first like 2-3 items and such, but at some point RNG is gonna factor in with how many of X items you get. Even like you can choose to prio things a certain way, but just because everything's contested and everything's wanted by everyone, like you just might have like some weird prios happening just because you just don't get any chests, so you don't get any cloaks or whatever it is.
Yeah.
As well as that, like factoring in that it's like the last phase and you're trying to keep people interested, and maybe some people don't really go for the most logical upgrade. They just have like a piece of gear they really, really want. That actually happened to me because we were looking at the back piece today for... we actually got chests. We killed Mura and we got the chest. And they're like, okay, Snow, it's either going to you or it's going to this hunter here. And we're trying to decide like who should get it then. And for me, I really want the back as my biggest pickup, even though legs and chest are really big. But I want the back because I can use it in PvP as well.
Gotcha.
So I tried to negotiate. I was like, can I pass on this and then take the back instead? But our hunter, even though it's not as much of an DPS upgrade for him to take the back over just taking the chest, he really wants the back because he never got Cloak of Fiends to ever even drop for him.
Gotcha.
So he doesn't even have like the secondary option. So
yeah, it's kind of like who is it? I was looking at the belt stuff where it's like if you look at like the belt and it's like upgrade from 100 deaths, like arms is a BM hunter is like one of the highest, right? But from like Don Alejandro's up, it's not. And then arms is like one of the highest upgrades for them. But then I'm like, I know Rets who don't have 100 deaths, and it's like the largest fucking upgrade for those guys who didn't get it, unless you're like a poor warrior using red belt to battle still.
Yeah.
But even then.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like weird gear jumps like that. And that's why my rogue now has the chest, because I was like, oh well, I guess I'll just take the chest then, and it's fine. But it's what I have learned though is that a lot of classes don't look at the secondary option, particularly as you get into the less hardcore guilds. A lot of classes don't consider what the secondary options are and the DPS gains from that necessarily. Because like, for example, I think we had Vicious Hawkstrider tunic drop today or yesterday. I guess for US people, yesterday off, is it Muru? I think that's off Muru as well. But either way, we got Vicious Hawkstrider drop, and people just didn't know whether they wanted it or not. It just dropped and people were like, I don't really want it. Everyone wants Bladed Chaos instead. And the raid lead had to say, yeah, but does anyone just want it? It's not going to count as like a big pickup or anything. We just need to give this to someone. And like even the hunters, like some of our hunters didn't even want it. And then I looked at the chart and I was like, wait, isn't this like a 50 DPS upgrade for some of you guys still running like Midnight or a tier 6? Or 40 DPS upgrade, like, why don't you guys want this? And for some of them, it's like, I don't want to bother like rejamming or swapping up the hit gear and such. And the others, some of them like didn't even know. Like at first, we had the enhanced shaman in the discussion for the Bladed Chaos as well, and I was like, wait, aren't you leatherworking? Why don't you just do the leatherworking tunic instead? And he's like, wait, I can get a leatherworking tunic? But I think with the glaive, it's interesting that it seems that like I was saying in a previous podcast that, man, the DPS gain for the glaive warriors and such, they need both, right, to really get use from it. Like just getting the main hand by itself isn't that great.
No,
right?
It's not. And it's especially getting the offhand by itself is not that great.
Yeah, but which makes it tricky for the glaive. For guilds that haven't gotten a single glaive, it makes it tricky. Because like I was telling people before, my guild has warrior first for the glaive. But now I was looking at these values and I was like, wait, so you don't even gain from even getting the main hand glaive, really? Compared to what you can get
the other things, yeah.
Other things now. So like really if we give it to a warrior first at this point, we have to wait until he gets both, and Wrath of the Lich King's already coming. It's like, well, what is even the benefit at this point? Like, by the time, unless we get lucky, by the time we get the set for him, it's like, oh, the game's over. So we really had to revisit and think, like, maybe it shouldn't go to Warrior first at this point, just because Phase 5 stuff's here and Wrath of the Lich King's coming, and he needs the set. Like, it might take us too long to even complete it.
So it's like comparing the no set thing, right?
Yeah, comparing no set. So it's been, it's interesting. But yeah, I think one of the interesting points though for this chat is the trinket. I think like there's a lot of people that put trinket really high up on their prio, just because in the past trinkets have always been like, oh, trinkets are the big ticket item, right?
Change what you do, yeah.
But then if you actually look at the gain of the DPS from trinkets, it's actually not as much as like a lot of these other pieces. like getting that big BNS pickup, the shard pickup, is actually not that much compared to previous phases and to other gear. To the point where it's almost like I almost feel like prioing trinket for a lot of classes is a trap. If you prio that, you probably just passed up on a prio on a bigger other contested item that's actually more DPS upgrade for you in a lot of cases. So it kind of like it's a weird one. Like the trinket is a weird one in that the trinket people consider it a big ticket item, but for a lot of the classes it's actually maybe not really a big ticket, or it's rather not the big ticket that they should necessarily be aiming for.
Yeah, I mean it's weird because like a lot of the items are very large upgrades, very large DPS upgrades for like the first time in Sunwell, where it's like you're gaining over 100 DPS on some of these fucking things. So it's insane. Whereas trinkets, like you said, used to be that way. But also keep in mind that there are trinkets, like as few and far between as there are for trinkets versus all other slots, and you need 2 trinkets. Some of the trinkets that you got early in the game age incredibly well. Like Bloodlust Brooch is still pretty damn good, right? It's like DST is still incredible on a lot of classes. Like people have been using basically Sunwell level trinkets already. So there are trinkets that definitely have held out. So.
Yeah. I mean, even like Warp Spring Call for my rogue is I'm gonna be using that because to armor pen cap I need golden bow really, and I'm not getting a golden bow. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sure, man. I don't know. We might maybe get a golden bow.
We're gonna need a lot of bows before the rogue gets the golden bow. So yeah, I haven't even really worried too much about picking up my shard just yet because I know I'm probably using Warp Spring Call for a while, and I'll pick up my shard at some point, but there's no real rush for me. But yeah, I guess before we wrap up, you said you wanted to talk Thoridal. Yeah,
Thoridal's really interesting. I don't know if you've looked at any logs for Thoridal at all.
I haven't. What did you see?
So I raid in 2 guilds that have Thoridals already, and what I've noticed is your basic attack damage, your auto attack damage actually goes down a bit by like anywhere from 100 to 200 damage per auto, but your steady shot goes up by almost 500, right? On average, if you start looking at logs. And it's a 2.7 speed weapon. So when you start combining cooldowns, your attack speed can get to 1.0 or below. So I'm seeing people like want to spec survival so they can continue to melee weave and stack cooldowns and stuff and not have serpent swiftness. And then even go 0, 20, 41 readiness so they don't have the hawk proc chance, because it doesn't do a lot for them when they start shooting faster and then clipping their steady shot into their auto, which their auto does less damage anyway. So it's actually really interesting, right? Steady shot scales off of weapon damage, so you do end up doing more damage overall, but it feels like you start doing 1-to-1s steady shots to autos, and some people were even like speculating you might even do 2-to-1 and like even clip your auto on purpose. And I was like, really? Because it's just like it hits 500 harder and it starts ending up being just really fast. And you also don't want to stack your cooldowns anymore. So it ends up being like you definitely don't want DST if you have Thoridal. The proc can like mess up some stuff. You also end up in a situation where your weapon is so fast with lust, you're like haste pot on top of that, and if you rapid fire, you end up with very low attack speed. So the guys I've been talking to who have Thoridal are saying like they don't want to rapid fire at the same time they're getting lusted or like at all anymore, because it's actually like a DPS loss if you continue to try and steady shot. So I'm like, I don't know how this is gonna work. and what's going to happen, because you can even look up at like if you look at like rets and stuff like that, if you scroll up a little bit and look at Apollyon on that chart, weapon speeds start getting very quick and people start getting like haste sets and stuff, that it becomes like Apollyon actually on like higher armor bosses, it says is equal to Torch, right? Because also again, twisting is going to be harder once you have a lot of haste and you have a 3.4 speed weapon. Same thing with arms, trying to slam with a 3.4 speed weapon when you have all this extra haste from gear and shit. So you end up in this situation where getting a faster weapon is not necessarily better. And so Thoridal is a really interesting one. And I actually posed the question, because I don't know, in like a perfect rotation and with realistic, like the person melee weaving as much as they can with either weapon, is Thoridal that good? Who gains more from having Thoridal? Is it a survival hunter or is it a BM hunter? From like a realistic rotation that you can continue to do. Because I've been talking to these guys and one of them is like survival now and says like it's still really fast even without the serpent swiftness. So it just gets really hard to start playing hunter, even though it was hard already to like melee weave and shit, to play it with all these other factors on top of it. So I actually wonder, because we're doing DPS comparisons here, right? It does look like it's like a slightly like 30 DPS upgrade more for the BM hunter than it is the survival hunter.
I feel like a lot of survivals are also getting the Thoridal prio as exchange for being the survival hunter.
Being survival,
yeah. A lot of them are playing that card now. It's like, I've been doing this for 5 phases. It's my turn now.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, you know, in an ideal world, you weave absolutely perfectly, and you have Thoridal, which just like, it is already an insane weapon, but it's insanely fast. I just don't know how I as a player would manage melee weaving perfectly while having Thoridal during cooldowns and continuing to steady shot as BM. That just seems like it would be very overwhelming.
But yeah, I'd be interested to see that. I'm sure Hunter Discord can have a nice discussion, nice measured discussion about that, about the Thoridal prio. It's kind of crazy. I guess the final thing I'll say is that it's kind of crazy the DPS gains in Sunwell just for like individual gears, even for tier pieces sometimes, right? Like rogues, you get like 90 DPS upgrade just for boots. And it's I actually had someone message me and say, Snow, are you sure this is right? Like why are we suddenly getting so much DPS in one tier? And I'd be like, no, it's right. It's just the gears just real crap. It's just like the stat gains are insane. It's just like, I don't know why, but they just chose Sunwell. It's like, yeah, you guys get crazy stats now. Is what happens is why. So we don't know why they chose Sunwell for that, but Sunwell is just like the phase where suddenly, I talked about it in one of my videos where like before, we're used to DST from Blackwing Lab being like, oh, this is the best item. Not DST.
DFT.
DFT. Yeah, DFT in Classic was like a 20 DPS upgrade for rogues, and everyone was like, oh my god, 20 DPS upgrade.
20.
And now we're talking about like if it's a 20 DPS upgrade, it's not even like mid tier maybe. like mid tier right now is like 50 DPS upgrade. High tier is like 100 DPS upgrade. The DPS gains for individual pieces of gear for all the classes are just crazy. Actually crazy. But yeah, so I mean that's all I got, Zirene. I know you gotta go raid as well.
Yep, I do.
Yeah, so we gotta call it. But yeah, thanks everyone guys for hanging out for Prepared today. If you want the link for the sheet, it'll be in the description for the video and in my Discord as well in the prio section. So yeah, appreciate you guys hanging out, and Zirene, I'll catch you later. You gotta go run for your raid.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right, see you guys. Peace out.